He is a historically weak president from the perspective of popularity and public opinion. But it also just kind of raises the question about why all these people, all these universities, these law firms, these media companies are bowing down to Trump when he is a historically politically weak figure. Like, we're buying into his narrative of strength, and that is problematic.
So let's start with some exciting news-ish. Jimmy Kimmel's back, and before Disney and ABC announced the show was returning, the Disney boycott gained a huge amount of steam. Google searches for cancel Disney hit an all-time high, and Disney's stock went down 2% while the rest of the market was up. So the Republicans are in the middle of a very aggressive censorship campaign. This cannot be good for Trump, right?
No, it cannot. This is actually interesting. Let's just take a step back for a sec. So Disney announced that Kimmel was coming back. Both Sinclair and Nexstar, two very large corporations that own a huge chunk of American local TV stations, have said they are going to preempt Kimmel again tonight. I think Nexstar or Sinclair or both aired Celebrity Family Feud instead. According to reports, that did not do as well as Kimmel would have done. But the reason why that's interesting is because it is a result of the crackdown. Sinclair, as we know, is a right-wing organization that sort of infamously had all of its news anchors read the same copy a few years ago. That was all sort of media bashing, anti-left stuff. Nexstar is in the midst of trying to merge with another local TV conglomerate. For that merger to go through, they need the approval of Trump's FCC to lift what's called the 39% cap, which is a rule that says that no one entity can own TV stations that reach more than 39% of the American public. This merger would allow them to reach a huge amount. So they are still under the thumb of Brendan Carr. So Kimmel's back on the air. The censorship campaign is continuing forward. So let's get to the question of, is it good for them? No. And I think it's not good for the Republicans for several reasons. One, this is not what people elected Trump for. Right. We go through all the different ways in which Trump won, and at the risk of oversimplifying, it comes down to two things. A bunch of people who don't like Trump, they told pollsters they did not approve of him, voted for him because they thought he would do one of two things better than Kamala Harris: lower costs and secure the border. People feel pretty good about the border right now. There are larger questions, very fair questions about, and a lot of growing disapproval of his handling of immigration writ large. But on costs, people are very unhappy. Costs are going up. People are unhappy about it. Trump has terrible approval ratings on inflation. So every time he's doing something that's not the thing they asked him to do, that is infuriating to them. So that's part one. Part two is the way they've handled this has led to a bunch of intra-party fighting. You've had Ted Cruz and Megyn Kelly and a bunch of others attacking Trump over the censorship, over this very dumb comment from Pam Bondi about how they were going to crack down on hate speech. Intra-party conflict is notable because it's so rare for Trump. And so when you have it, actually, it drives attention and it raises questions because these are people when you have a liberal or a member of the media yelling at Trump, that doesn't really move the needle because there are always liberals and members of the media yelling at Trump. When you have someone from his coalition yelling at Trump or yelling at his appointees, that's notable and can move votes among some people. And then the third thing is the people most pissed about this are the apolitical, MAGA adjacent, former comedian manosphere influencer types who have huge loyal followings. People like Andrew Schultz, Tim Dillon, people like that. And those people are pissed about this. And so they're communicating to their audience about how Trump has violated his promises on free speech. They're saying that Trump is doing more to rein in speech than Biden ever did, that this is a massive assault on free speech. So that hurts in the short term, and it hurts more in the long term because it means that these people will not be validators for Trump with this group of apolitical, mostly young men who moved to Trump in 2024. That was a mouthful, so I apologize for that, but I had a lot to say.
I had one follow-up question. When Ted Cruz says something against Trump, is that really hold any weight, or everyone just hates Ted Cruz and it doesn't matter?
I mean, I think everyone hates Ted Cruz, but I think more generally it's just intra-party conflict makes things seem messy and is always negative because it gets more attention. So yes, no one is man, Ted Cruz is a good, loyal guy. And no, it's more just look at this giant mess Trump's created. That seems problematic and that's bad for Trump.
Yeah. G. Elliott Morris in his Substack has been harping on the fact that people are critically downplaying Trump's unpopularity. Can you elaborate more on that? Because I was starting to feel hope.
Yeah, no, hope is good. I'm not going to dissuade you from hope. I mean, I think G. Elliott Morris is making an important point here, which is you can look at this two ways. You look at it in the nation as a whole, right, where you really only have large swaths of American people do not vote. And so the people who make up the Trump base is actually a pretty small fraction of the American people. So that should give you like some hope about the country itself. You know, and yes, there is some, we've talked about this on the show before, there is some dispute about who these non-voters would have voted for had they voted. There's David Shore, among others, who's a Democratic pollster, has argued, Nate Cohn, the New York Times pollster, has argued that they would probably vote for Trump given the choice. But even if they did, they're not hardcore MAGA, right? And so they're falling in that category I talked about before. They don't really like Trump, but they want lower costs or more secure border or something like that. And so just if your thing is like, oh my God, this country's going to hell in a handbasket, everybody's becoming a right-wing pro-Trump person, that's not the case. The pro-Trump faction is actually a small part of the overall population. And then the other way to look at this is through the filter of who actually is part of the political process, who are the people who vote in presidential elections and may vote in the midterms coming up. And so when you look at where Trump stands, he did not win some sweeping victory. He won by the smallest popular vote margin of anyone other than Al Gore in 2000 in recent history. He won by less than Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by in 2016. And as you may recall, she did not become president. He did win all 7 battleground states, but not by a huge margin in any one. So like historically, it's a very, very, very narrow victory. He does not have some giant mandate. His approval rating is lower than Biden's was at this point in 2021. And that's interesting because this is after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was sort of the catalyst event that started Biden on his downward spiral. His approval rating is lower than any president at this point in modern history other than Donald Trump. In 2017, his approval rating on almost every issue is underwater, and significantly so, whether it's the economy, immigration, inflation, etc. And so he is a historically weak president from the perspective of popularity and public opinion. And I think that's notable because, one, it should give Democrats some hope, and we can talk about, you know, how measured that hope should be. But it also just kind of raises the question about why all these people, why Disney originally, why all these universities, these law firms, these media companies are bowing down to Trump when he is a historically politically weak figure. Like, we're buying into his narrative of strength, and that is problematic.
Yeah, well, and isn't like at the end of, I mean, at least right now until the next election, perception is everything, right? Because I mean, the perception is that he's like universally beloved.
Yes. And he's done a very good job of cultivating it. And there have not been a lot of Democrats who've done a good job of pushing back on it. And he does, like, to be fair, he does have actual power. Right. That is not hemmed in by public opinion. Like, he can use the FCC to extort Disney, right? Or Nexstar, whoever else. He can use the Department of Justice to prosecute his enemies. What would stop him from doing that right now would be a couple of things. One would be shame, which he does not have. Another would be pressure from within his party, which was something that held him back from doing some of these things in 2017. He does not have that now. The other thing would be pressure from outside forces, big business, Wall Street, the media, et cetera. And those people have decided not to fight. They have preemptively surrendered and handed over their freedoms and their rights and everything else to Trump. And this idea that if we can just survive this next 5 minutes, will be better. And as you see in this Disney situation, this is a perfect example. And like, I give kudos to Disney for bringing Kimmel back. I mean, but honestly, that's bare fucking minimum. Is like Disney after the election, very early, they settled a frivolous lawsuit where Trump had sued George Stephanopoulos. They settled that suit for $16 million. So they thought the best way they want to get a big fight with Trump. They wanted to buy goodwill with him. And so what does he do then? He just takes more from them, right? Like, the lesson here is that there is no benefit to appeasement. If you want something, you got to fight. And so that's the lesson I hope that people take from the Disney thing. And to understand the value of that lesson, you have to understand that Trump is not as strong as he thinks he is. He is not as popular as he thinks he is. American people are not as bought into his agenda as he thinks they are. And so, like, I think it's a helpful perspective, or corrective at least, from G. Elliott.
So over the weekend, Turning Point USA hosted a mega memorial service for Charlie Kirk. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Don Jr., Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, Stephen Miller were among the approximately 90,000 people in attendance. Republicans clearly view Kirk's death as a galvanizing event. I mean, this memorial was very much half Trump rally. Is it?
I don't think so. I think it obviously is something that's gotten a ton of attention. It has a lot of significance within the right. I mean, obviously for the people who knew Charlie Kirk, and I think for a lot of his followers, and I think it has meant something. Like, it is, like, I always track data from this group called Resonate, which is a progressive group that tracks online engagement of various topics. And the Charlie Kirk engagement, particularly from right-leaning accounts, is like through the moon. Like, this is one of the biggest stories of all time. So in that sense, it's a big deal. And I think it could have been a galvanizing event, except Trump and everyone else has overplayed their hand. The whole big intra-party dispute we just talked about came out of their response to Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Right.
The Pam Bondi hate speech debacle came out of their response to the Charlie Kirk assassination. And so they have overplayed their hand and turn it into something to galvanize. Like, you could use it as a political organizing event. Maybe they will, to get more people involved. Maybe Turning Point will do more stuff, or they will be better funded or something, or they will move on in the memory of Charlie Kirk. But Trump and his minions have tried to overplay this and turn it into a vengeance campaign, which has already started to backfire for them.
Yeah, it's gross when the widow of Charlie Kirk is saying, I forgive, and then Trump is like, fuck that, I hate all my opponents.
That is the most authentically Trump thing you could possibly imagine him saying. He definitely believes that.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That's it for this week's preview of Polar Coaster. If you want to watch the rest of this episode, become a paid member of this channel by clicking the join button below. When you subscribe, you'll also get more exclusive content and ad-free episodes of Pod Save America and more crooked shows. Plus, this is very important, joining is the best way to directly support our efforts to build a counterweight to Fox News and the rest of the right-wing media machine. You can learn more at crooked.com/friends. Thank you, and I'll see everyone next time.